Are we there yet? Yes, we're there. Okay. All right. So, welcome, everybody. And this is going to be my first official live chat. And we're going to discuss some things about why I've decided to finally say, okay, Earth is flat, and what I've learned over the last few years. I've always been 85% convinced after I learned about it, but there were still some things that really needed a little more scientific explanation. So I think that's what we're going to touch on a little bit today. We're also going to talk about the spiritual and meta implications of flat Earth, where we go from here and how you can thrive in this new environment. We are essentially pioneers. We are essentially the people on the Mayflower. We are in uncharted territories, and we are leaving behind a lot of old world, old-minded thinking and naysaying, and people that just think we're idiots. And perhaps we are idiots, but at least we're idiots together. And I'll explain later in the show why it doesn't really matter if the Earth is flat or round. The only thing that matters is the fact that we are saying no. No to what we've been told, no to the hierarchy, no to the oligarchy, no to just anything that's holding us behind. So if there's, before we jump into it, anybody want to say anything? Put something in the chat box. I'll jot it down, and if it's something I can get to later on in the show, or if it's something we can talk about now as it pertains to the direction that we're going, go ahead and type it on in there. And in the meantime, those of you who are in the room, thank you for joining. I know there's going to be stragglers, and if anybody knows a live chat that's going on right now, if you just go to type in flat Earth and then change the filter in the search bar to show live, it'll show what's I know ODD's channel streaming live now. Some of you may have wrenches, and if you do, you can paste that link in there and remind people, hey, show's live. All right, we have 10 people. This is going to be fun. Okay, I have something that I'm going to discuss. Is there is a real lack of unified body of information for flat Earth. There seems to be a lot of speculation, pseudoscience, half-truths, no real good concrete evidence to be able to take us seriously by the mainstream. So, but we get lots of questions and lots of curiosity, and so many people may be spouting misinformation and knowledge that just really isn't very, very well vetted. So what I think needs to happen is, okay, so Eric Dubay wrote a book, 200 Proofs, The Earth is Not a Spinning Ball or whatever, and it's a good book. There's a lot of good information. A lot of it comes from, the 1800s and Vedic resources and just some logical arguments that are hard to poke, So, however, there's a little controversy surrounding the character, and I think what's going on here is, while the information may be good, when I thumb through it, I see about 85% that's pretty solid and about 15% that isn't. So I think there needs to be something a little more simple, kind of like a chick track for Christians. I don't know if you guys remember those chick tracks. But I've decided to start writing a flat tract, and I think it would basically answer, say, like the 10 top 10 or 20 common most asked flat Earth questions, and just keep it real simple and to the point. It's the same questions asked over and over and over again. You know, I'll set it up like an ebook that people can download, or people can buy a little tiny pamphlet and hand out to their friends, or just leave them places. I think it'll be a really good, you know, idea. Yeah, exactly. A Cliff Notes for Flat Earth. So sometimes, and I just bought flatearthfacts.info last night, so that stuff will be available there, more than likely. So I'll set up some good put that right there. So here's some. I've been going through a lot of the comments, and maybe you guys can help me out here. It's kind of, I just see it so much, it's just kind of hard to keep putting together the same questions, the same comments over and over and over again, because everybody asks the same thing. So I've been trying to gather what I felt was the most commonly asked questions in a way that you can answer that doesn't involve speculation or guessing or just talking at your ass. So I wrote a list here. Number 1, explain how day and night happens. I'll start with a simple visual. Look at the hands of a clock, which is what the flat Earth was originally modeled after anyway. There used to be a clock somewhere that I saw that had an hour hand represented the sun and the other hand represented the moon. Anyway, to answer your question, the sun travels over the Earth plane in a circular pattern around an electromagnetic pole in the center. Its light can only cast about an 8,400 mile diameter swath of light. Like a single street light doesn't light up an entire town, but rather illuminates right under it, and a little to each side. You go far enough away from the street light, your local area is dark until you start to approach it again. The sun goes around in a circular pattern at a constant rate across our sky. I felt that's a fairly simple analogy, very easy for people to visualize. Number 2, what holds the ocean water from falling off the edge? This is the hardest part for people to shake free from, that there has to be an edge and that we're still floating in the vacuum of space in the empty void of nothingness. There isn't an edge. Any flat earther who thinks that is an idiot or a troll for the Flat Earth Society, which, in my opinion, is the onion of conspiracy news outlets, completely tongue-in-cheek to discredit anyone talking from the subject seriously. Back in Columbus's day, there was thought to be an edge. He found new land and they had to expand the model to fit the new paradigm. The same thing is true today. There is no edge, but possibly more land. If regular people got wind of this, there would be a massive land rush, and the world powers would have no one left to tax, so they'd have to keep us in the ant farm, distracted and busy working for them. This is why the dome firmament idea is just a stopgap for the next evolution of admissions. At some point, they may concede the earth is flat and allow for biblical interpretations to take hold, if merely for appeasement of the masses. Yeah, it appears to be flat, but there's still nowhere to go. You're fenced in. So go back to work. Don't bother trying to keep exploring. Nothing to see here. The true nature of our world is that it's most likely an infinite flat plane. Our ocean world that we inhabit just happens to be something akin to a geothermal pond. Remember, the sun is orbiting around, keeping the waters melted. In fact, there may be millions of other geothermal ponds off in the distance, with their own suns, their own moons, and possibly inhabitants as well. Aliens? Maybe. We'll cross that plane when the time is right. Number 3. If the Earth is flat, why do the poles have ice and are colder at the furthest regions of the Earth? Well, back to the clock analogy. The sun's path only takes on a ring that spirals out as far as the Tropic of Capricorn and as tight as the Tropic of Cancer. Basically, the sun only tracks between those two imaginary boundaries in the sky. This brings me back to the reason for the infinite plane of ice. The sun can only heat up what it's basically over. If we had a larger sun and possibly a little higher up, it would conceivably melt a larger ocean and even make the tropic zone a dry desert. This also explains ocean currents, weather phenomenon, earthquakes, volcanic activity, as well as the often miscited Coriolis effect. The sun's path has a direct electromagnetic influence on many things as it passes overhead, including the direction of cyclones versus hurricanes. Number 4. Why is the pole star not visible from the southern hemisphere? Simple distance and atmospheric distortion. I'll direct you to this guy's videos who's taken over a year and plugged in all of JPL's astronomical data points into Cinema 4D, including atmospheric refraction and distortion, and has yielded some actual true nature of our flat plane recreated in an actual computer simulation model. This is using their numbers, not flat earthers' numbers, not conspiracy theorist calculations, but NASA JPL's own data points. I'll sum it up. From our vantage point on the ground, the lights in the sky bend and refract in weird ways, but very predictable and calculable according to computer simulation. He has excellent models and can even show the planet movements of the sun and the moon and NLMs. And I'm going to go ahead and throw in a couple of video clips for you that show what we're talking about. Or I was. So what you're seeing here is a computer simulated model of 100-year time at 1-day intervals of the sun and the moon's analemma going around in a circular pattern, kind of like a spiral graph. And these data points are calculable and measurable, and they're technically irrefutable. This is exactly what it looks like from our perspective on the ground, the sun and the moon going back and forth. Does everybody get that so far? Let's try. This is very interesting. Here is the Earth, the Sun, and Mars. This is Steve Torrance's channel, by the way. You guys might want to bookmark. He spent a lot of time on these models. And I'd have to say, this is what finally made me go, okay, this makes sense. Now we can move forward. I agree the Earth is flat, and these models work. Okay, so what you're going to notice here, he's taken the time to plot the Mars analemma in the sky, and this is exactly what we see from our vantage point. So when you take these data points and plot them over a flat plane, it ends up making a very unique shape in the sky. And any of you junior astrophysicists out there are welcome to double check these data points. And as you notice, Mars' path is basically making what kind of looks like a toroidal pattern, a very natural, evolved path. It doesn't look random. It looks perfect and designed and intelligent. Now here you're spinning the camera around so you see the shape Mars makes. Now Mars may not be anything larger than, you know, a giant comet. We don't know specifically what size it is. We have guesses based on the heliocentric model, but it could very well just be a rock orbiting in space. It could be just a light. But at this point, it's like we have to question everything. And my hat's off to anybody who takes the time to plot these things. And the interesting thing is, every planet does that. Every planet has its own unique shape in the sky, its orbital path. And he has some longer videos that show more detail, and he includes all the planets and all the orbits, and it just starts to look like a giant box of crayons. It's really fascinating. I'm gonna throw in one more here. This is what he calls the flat Earth celestial clock. Now watch this very carefully. There's the star trails, and then once you get into atmosphere, the light bends, and it shows exactly what we see on the ground. And he's modeled this based off of the Veracruz, Mexico, 18 degrees, 95 degrees. And so this is verifiable. You could literally go to Veracruz and spin around and watch these star trails in these positions, and this is how it would look on the ground. And there are some videos that actually show this distortion when you see some of these Milky Way rift galaxy things. If you see any of those animated shots and where it pans to the left a little bit, you'll see that it starts to morph off. The lines start to curve around. I'm going to play that one more time. I want people to see what happens. So he's charted basically the majority of the stars that we see from the northern hemisphere around Solaris, around Polaris, the pole star. So watch as you come in here and you see the star trails show up and emerge, and they just kind of circular in a flat disk around. But as soon as you add atmospheric refraction, which Cinema 4D has mapped perfectly, it shows the star trails, how we see them. And depending on your latitude, you know, that arcing, that bending changes. Let's see if I can. Okay, so let me go back to my list of questions. We're on number 5. Why does the North Hemisphere and South Hemisphere have opposite climates? I've already answered this question above in number 3, but again, the sun travels on an ever-widening path in the sky to give more light and longer days in what we refer to as the Southern Hemisphere. When it's on its tighter circle around the northern magnetic center, the weather transitions here as well. There's a little bit of side evidence right in the day-night calculator for any given point on the plane in its opposite region. If the sun travels in a larger path in the southern summer than it does in a tighter circle around the northern summer, there would be a time discrepancy between the hours of daylight. And in fact, there is about a 4 to 5 minutes difference between identical latitudes, north versus south, of daylight during each solstice. 24-hour daylight at the north region is also possible due to the sun's tighter circle path, because there's a little overlap. Number 6. Why does the equator receive more sunlight than other regions? Same question asked differently. The clock analogy above. The sun travels in between the imaginary lines of Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn, passing over the center line we call the equator. If the Earth is flat, which side is up in space? Breaking the brainwash of the space paradigm is going to be the toughest. We like space. We like sci-fi. We like Martians, aliens, Star Wars, Star Trek. We like expansive universes with infinite possibilities. What's not to like? We've been inundated and indoctrinated by Hollywood and false science for so long that we can totally picture in our heads a galaxy or a world far, far away. But being on an infinite plane of existence means there's nothing physically below that, and nothing physically above it either, that we can reach with our limited technology anyway. Many ancient religions and scholarly texts speak about the 7 ethereal planes. We happen to be on the one that expresses itself as the physical. There's transcendence to the next plane, but I guess you have to wait until you die to see that. Or maybe you just keep repeating this life until you get it, much like Groundhog's Day. Number 8. How come when I look up at the planets, the sun and the moon, they are round? It's obvious that we must be round too. Well, this is really circular reasoning. The logical standpoint, it seems to make sense, but it's really a fallacy called affirming the consequent. Just because they are round doesn't necessarily mean we are round. More technically, spherical, but everyone says round. I'll argue that those bodies that appear to orbit in the sky are not known to harbor life, so their shape, size, and composition can be and actually are totally different than that of the earthly realm. Ergo, they can look however they appear to our eyes or our scientific sensors, but they don't have to look like us at all. But what about gravity? How do you explain gravity on a flat Earth? What about it? The real scientific definition of gravity by Albert Einstein himself, in which describes gravity as not a force but a consequence of the curvature of space-time caused by the uneven distribution of mass and energy. So, curving of space-time is how you describe everything from water sticking to a 1,000-mile-per-hour spinning sphere, and it keeps the infinite vacuum of space from sucking off our atmospheric gases. Have you ever seen what happens in a vacuum chamber? Even if there's a slight pinhole, the entire thing gets equalized at the speed of sound. So gravity is so powerful to fight off the force of the infinite vacuum, but can't pull a boat through the water, but still allows birds to fly. I'm sorry, but density and buoyancy already explain our natural world just fine. The gases stratify based on their atomic number in the atmosphere. From mercury to helium and everything in between has interactions with each other based on its mass versus density. Gravity is not the mic drop end of discussion trump card that is so commonly played out to be. Your scientism god, Neil deGrasse Tyson, can't even explain gravity and doesn't even know what it is. Number 10. What about the curvature? I've seen the curve from an airplane. I see boats disappear over the horizon. And again, I'll have links to some companion videos with some of these questions. And there's the Earth curve calculator that a lot of you have seen and used. Basically what I say here is you'll end up with numbers that do not match reality at all. And all these things you can actually go and verify with cameras and a good zoom lens. Boats don't really go over the horizon, but rather just go out of view due to atmospheric conditions. Haze, heat, dust, humidity, and the gas medium that we breathe, air, itself isn't exactly transparent. It's a mixture of oxygen and nitrogen. Technically, there are 10 gases. Nitrogen, oxygen, argon, carbon dioxide, neon, helium, methane, krypton, hydrogen, and xenon. That's a lot of stuff we have to look through sideways over a long distance. It's harder to see horizontally 40 miles than it is to just look up through only 5 miles of gases. This layer of gas air also creates the atmospheric lensing effects we see only on the horizon, like the sun and the moon looking larger as the sun and the moon rise and set. Plus, this is why you'll never see Rocky Mountains from New York, even in a perfect vacuum with no gas, air, dust, pollen, moisture to obscure the mountains. You'd never be able to see them just due to the laws of perspective. They would just be too small. Looking down a long straight railroad track goes to a point, but in reality it doesn't mean that it is a point. We can only see about a maximum of 230 miles in any one direction, even from the top of Mount Everest. Viewing a boat disappearing over the horizon, but you can actually bring it back into view through a telescope or a really long zoom lens. How does that work? Zoom lenses see around a curve, and if there really was a curve, you could also see the boat curve to the left and right, because we're on a ball, right? But no one has ever seen that, ever. Here's the deal. If we're on the curve, and in order to see it from the air or space, you physically need to be at a minimum height of 3,500 miles to start seeing the curving edge on a ball that has a radius of 12,500 miles. So every image you see from the International Space Station is a complete fabrication, since they only fly at a supposed 220 miles above Earth. You've never been in an airplane that flies 18.4 million feet away from the surface. At most, you've been 35,000 feet. Therefore, you cannot see a curvature from the airplane with your own eyes. And this brings me to a point where I'm going to show you some really fun little animations. Now, what you're seeing here, this is just made by a guy who uploads these clips to Shutterstock. And I purposely left the Shutterstock logo on there because I want you to see that this is fake. Somebody just literally made this on a computer, yet it looks extremely convincing. Is everybody seeing this? This is on par with what NASA shows us, or better. And this is just made by a guy. This is just made in a 3D animation program, rendered, and it looks pretty convincing. Now what happens when you put a satellite over that? What's taking a picture of the satellite? Now, granted, the next few that I'm going to show you here, they're obvious 3D animated models, but it doesn't take much more scene rendering and post-production to make these look realistic. In fact, Hollywood does it all the time. So if there was a graphics server farm rendering this scene to its final output, it could look even more realistic than this. But my point is, somebody just spent their time and did this for free. They weren't paid by NASA. They just upload their artwork in hopes that somebody would use it. And yet these are very convincing. Which brings a point I want to make, that it's interesting how space looks better as the technology improves. Space should have always looked the same from the 60s till now, but just so happens to get better and better and better. So there is going to come a time when there's going to be generations of people that don't know what it was like to see crappy space. And all they have to know is, you know, better renderings, bigger computers. We're talking 4K, 6K, 8K. You know, the resolutions are just going to get better and better and more realistic. It'll be harder to discern what you see on the TV as real. And again, even without the CGI space station in the view, if this played on the nightly news or the Discovery Channel, you'd think this was filmed from the ISS. You'd think this is real. But these can easily be bought for $79 a piece on Shutterstock. Not that hard, apparently. Okay, so back to the questions. Let's see, what number was that? I guess that's about 10 questions so far. Basically what I would like is I'd like everybody to contribute some common questions they see in the forums and in the YouTube comment section of people who are just generally curious or think they're smug and they just know, they just have this great answer or this great stumping question that stumps all the flat earthers. Go ahead and put that in the chat box, and I'll answer those in maybe upcoming videos and throw them in the book so we can help nail the globe lie in the coffin once and for all. Nicholas, do I get a spanner? You sound English. I don't know. Do you get a spanner? Use it wisely. Okay, so let's see. Let's go on to some other topics here. Cohesion is key in overriding indoctrination in the establishment. So what I've noticed and why I avoid Flat Earth as a community, quote unquote, is that there are many different factions and party lines, much like how real life plays out. Whether it's religion, the difference between Protestantism and Episcopalians and Catholics and Jehovah's Witness, or Republicans and Democrats and alt-right and alt-left and the like. Flat Earth is a very polarizing topic. And I think in order for it to be even remotely considered serious or taken seriously about scientific validation and things like that, there needs to be some commonality, and people need to shake off derision and division, because nothing shakes up a group more than a rotten apple, or people with bad attitudes, or people who think they're right, or they have glommed on to a personality or a leader, or a clump of information in which they feel aligns with their viewpoint and what makes sense to them. You know, because Flat Earth is such a new topic, there's so much that we don't know, and there's so much that has been hidden from us, and so much that we have to learn still. And unfortunately, some of what we have to learn requires intervention from giant scientific bodies with large grants, lots of money, government backing, institutional backing, public backing, things of that nature. Because, you know, even for just a regular dude to fly to Antarctica just for a vacation, and you don't even really get to go fully all the way into the interior, it costs about $40,000. And another issue is the last civilian nuclear-powered icebreaker was decommissioned. It was the Yamal. It was a Russian icebreaker, and it was, you know, it could have been rented. It could have been leased to go down there, but it just so happens they decommissioned it. So who's left with nuclear-powered ships that can stay down in the southern hemisphere long enough to explore, or do a circumnavigation, or go through corridors, or break ice? That's military ships. So unless you have the money and the power and the resources to commission a new nuclear ship, which of course there's non-nuclear proliferation treaties that probably prevent you from doing so, it's physically impossible to do an exploration. So, that being said, if we're not all together in agreement on what constitutes flat Earth, let's boil it down to 5 bullet points, 5 things we can all agree on, and then just let the rest filter away. That's something I think that needs to be discussed. In the only way that you can get past indoctrination and get past the establishment telling us no is if we stand firm, stand together. Because right now, what's going on is there's literally people paid to come and talk shit. There's literally people that get paid with taxpayer money to come and talk shit and split people up. You know, there's literally people who aren't paid who are toting the line. Think of it this way. Have you ever worn a t-shirt or a brand of something that has their logo emblazoned across in front of it? You've paid money to wear a shirt that says Nike or Abercrombie and Fitch or Guess or whatever. It says it right across your chest. They're not paying you to be their billboard. You volunteered. You handed them money, bought their item, and you're walking around being a little billboard. Likewise, there are people who are walking around thumping the indoctrination of the globe. They're literally like, hey, you know what? This is what I was taught. This makes sense to me. Those guys had white lab coats. I read it in a book. And therefore, they are right. So I'm going to defend them, even though they didn't ask me to defend them. They aren't paying me to defend them. I'm going to defend them because, hey, it's a stance that I'm passionate about. And those are the people we need to watch out for. You know, can you provide enough evidence that's logical, clear, and concise to change their minds without arguing, without name-calling, without belittling each other? Because we're humans. Everybody deserves compassion. And, you know, and unfortunately, the filter of the internet, the screen, the veil of the internet removes that line of compassion, and we get nasty with each other, and we just keyboard warrior and say some really nasty, mean shit about people we've never met in person. And chances are, if you sat down and talked to that person in person, they'd be pretty civil. They'd probably have a conversation with you. They'd have a beer with you. But in the meantime, we have, you know, angry, nasty vitriol that's just being spewed in every direction over something that's kind of really silly. It doesn't really require much thought in your daily life. Like, it doesn't matter that the earth is flat if you're just going to go to work, pay your bills, raise a family, go to the ball game. You know, those people we don't necessarily need to reach. However, if those people get mad enough, they're like, hey, why have they lied to us? Why am I giving the government all my money for them to start wars, prop up a false economy, divide its citizens, cause civil war and strife and political drama? People will start to question. And this is why flat earth matters. And this will touch on one of my points, is if the earth is flat, it matters for socio-political and economic reasons. This is our time to wake up and shake off the old paradigm, the old world ways of thinking, that control system that keeps you in place, makes you a slave, makes you an ant, makes you a nobody to them. We are all creators. We all have the power of manifestation. If you're a Christian, it says so in the Bible. If you're an atheist, you believe in the law of attraction. If you're agnostic, you can believe in the law of attraction, I guess. But the point is that every ancient scripture has given us the powers and the tools to unlock our lives so we can live the way we want to live, without control, without fear, without war. But there are those amongst us who have gotten it in their heads that, hey, if we control this group of people, we can also tax them, and we can be in power. We can call ourselves kings. We can create thrones and sit upon them, and then we can have little people below us that we feed with gold and money and give them a little bit of power. They'll do our bidding. They'll do what we want. So now all of a sudden I have an army. And that's what's dangerous. And the flat earth would unseat that. It gives everybody back the power to be an individual. It gives everybody back the power to take control of their own lives and go, you know what? Yeah, you're right. The shape of the earth doesn't matter. But the indoctrination, being told no your whole life, that does matter. Being asked to fork over more than half of your earnings and give away to causes that you don't agree in or you didn't really have a say in. That's why flat earth matters. Number 3, avoid cult of personalities. Stick to facts, not feelings, because people suck. Here's what ends up happening, and this is like anything. We have this groupthink personality conflict that's just kind of innate in all of us. A lot of us are followers. We like being told what to do. We like simple choices laid out for us. You know, we want our bread and circuses. We want NASCAR. We want NFL. We want the NBA finals. We want to go to Walmart and shop. Those are things that we like because they're simple. Somebody else put those together to entertain us. They happen to make money off of us, and we happily give away our money for their attention. It's still a form of control. It's still a form of indoctrination. It's brainwashing. It dumbs you down. It doesn't allow for critical thinking. We can get into all that. But my point is about personalities of the flat earth. It doesn't take much of a personality for somebody to become a leader. It doesn't take much of a personality for somebody to rally together support because he has a smooth voice, he has a good presentation style, he has good facts, he put together a good video, he tells funny jokes, or I like the way he thinks, or he resonates with me. It doesn't take much to align yourself with a person's ideological stance on things. Because let's face it, we're all people and we're all different and we all come from different walks of life and we all have different interests. And not everybody resonates with everybody the same way. So, for instance, there are some people that like brash, crude humor. And then there's other people who like jokes about, kids and sports, so in the flat earth community, it's really interesting. Like the word shill gets tossed around so much. I'm just tired of hearing it. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't, but if you look at what they have to say and what they have to offer, at some point there's an end game to their message. Like Mark Sargent, for instance, he came on the scene and he presented really well. He had great videos, good information, well researched, but he promoted something that would only appeal to scientism geeks, sci-fi, fantasy people. It just so happened that there's, several TV shows using the dome. There's movies that feature the dome. He keeps saying from a video game standpoint, this is how I would create it. There's a wall, there's a structure, you can't go such and such so far. And he uses a lot of anecdotal and even some scientific evidence, as to why you can't go so far. And here's where I don't necessarily agree that there is a dome. If there is a dome, it's a construct. It's in your mind. There's a wall in your mind. Like, I physically can't go to Antarctica because I can't afford it. and it's really cold, it's negative 300 degrees, and eventually it's just dark for thousands and thousands of miles. That's a wall. That's a physical barrier. Now, as far as the firmament, pretty hard to talk about the firmament without bringing up Bible people, Christians, because there is scripture that happens to say firmament, but how many translations down was that? Did you read that in the ancient Hebrew, the Aramaic, how the Bible was written? Doesn't it say Rakia? So now if you take the next step and talk about the dome from a scientific standpoint, it could just be a radiation shield. It could just be that natural field that we can test with instruments. We know there is electromagnetism that surrounds the Earth. We know there's radiation belts that surround the Earth. That's all the dome could be too, and those forces are outside of the atmosphere. So in a sense, you can't fly an airplane where there's no oxygen, and there's no fluid dynamics of air to lift the wings, to provide lift. So that's why we can only fly certain planes so high, and they have to go so fast, where they quote unquote skip across the atmosphere with pulse ramjets at Mach 6. They're just literally skirting out there, consuming their own fuel, barely any oxygen for combustion at all. So, and I guess what's the Kármán line? 62 miles is officially where space starts, I believe. 62 to 73 miles, depending on where you are. So when you talk about the dome, you can say there's a spiritual wall, there's a spiritual barrier that keeps you physically from going so far, because the dome is in your mind, and the continents are positioned in such a way that it wasn't even until the technological advance of seafaring got to a certain point that we could even go to Antarctica. The water is just so cold, and the ice slush would just shred apart a wooden boat. So it took up until very recently in human history to even get out there. So that's always been a barrier. So, back to the personalities. Now, while that's his shtick, he's like, oh, I'm a dome guy because X, Y, and Z, video game theory, if they're creators. And, he's leaving his argument open enough to say, yeah, there might be a creator, there might be a God, and if there was, this is how they did it. Could have been aliens. Maybe the Anunnaki created this world for us or put us here. So it leaves it so open-ended, but what's the end game here? It's just going to continue talking in circles about the same things. It's like, okay, the Earth is a dome. Now what? Go back to sleep? Go back to work? Or are you going to develop interpersonal strengths and build communities based on the common knowledge? And how can we help each other and grow from the knowledge that we've all learned? And then let's see, who else is there? So then, of course, you've got Eric Dubay, who is really into conspiracy theories, and he writes some good books, and he's reprinted a lot of information that he copied out of other books, and he gives credit. I wouldn't dare claim him of plagiarizing, but then he gets ideological and political, and then he starts bringing in an angle that's just has no place in modern society. You can't just go around talking about other races and other people as if they're evil, even if they're in the same room. You just can't do that. It's negative. Whether or not any of that history or history revisionism is true, the point is you're still just talking shit. You're just inciting an argument, making people mad, making people polarizing. And that's divisive in and of itself. So the one thing I want to reiterate here is that cult of personality matters. Who you get your information from matters. The information might be 100% accurate, but as soon as they go off the cliff, we'll just say Goodwin's Law, for instance. I'm sure some of you know about that. As soon as you go off the cliff, then what you have to say psychologically and socially gets negated, even if you're 100% accurate. So you need to learn to separate yourselves from your feelings about people, your feelings about groups of people. Because let's be honest, you don't have proof that those people are out to get you. You're just labeling another group of people as different. You're pointing out other people's differences. And to me, that's destructive. It's bigotry and just has no place in a modern, enlightened discussion about anything. You cannot talk about spiritualism after you've just bashed a group of people. You are not enlightened. You're a closed-minded individual with nothing nice to say about anybody. And that, to me, is dangerous. It's dangerous politically. It's dangerous to the flat earth. It's dangerous to the movement. And it just has, you just need to distance yourself from people who are nasty, I guess is what I want to get at. If there's some people who always think there's a boogeyman, there's always somebody out to get me. I'm always under spiritual attack. I'm always under the government's out to get me. And maybe they are. But you know what? We are all creators, and we manifest everything through our thoughts and our emotions. And if you dwell on a thought for more than 17 seconds, it starts to manifest into reality. And it's so easy to dwell on negative thoughts for a long period of time that there's so much anecdotal evidence and so many people that will agree that when they think about things bad, it eventually happens to them. Take, for instance, getting a speeding ticket or traffic ticket, or your insurance is lapsed, or your tags are expired. You know in the back of your head that they're expired or that you're speeding, and you always think, oh, I hope I don't get caught. Hope I don't get caught. Well, guess what? You've allowed that thought to manifest to where you're now in alignment with that very scenario that you didn't want to happen. Always 100% without fail. Now, armed with that knowledge that, hey, my thoughts brought this into reality, what if I have positive thoughts? What if I change my way of thinking to attract the good things I want in life instead of the bad? Would that work? Can I have a better life just through sheer thought and action? Yes, you can. To me, that's what Flat Earth is about. It's about waking up people to the idea that you no longer have to accept what you've been told. You no longer have to accept the paradigm you've been given, that you were raised with. Oh, my daddy taught it this way. My church taught me this. And you're just going to blindly repeat the same thing over and over and over again. And it seems to me, unless you wake up, those people just keep repeating life. Honestly, I don't think you move on to another spiritual realm if you don't waken up while you're here. There's a lot of talk about a paradigm shift that happened around the year 2012, that whole Mayan thing. There's been a reset. We're in a new age. We come out of the age of Pisces. We're in the age of Aquarius, if you want to look at it that way. Or we're on the giant 26,500 year loop, and we're on the upswing, the height of humanity. We're going to get more knowledge. We're going to get more enlightened. We're going to raise to a higher vibration, a higher frequency. More and more people are finding each other and we're engaging with people offline. We're meeting in person. We're shaking hands. We're building relationships. We're establishing friendships, because that's what life is about. It's not about acquisition and subsistence. It's about meeting other souls, other people, other humans, instilling humanity despite the darkness. And, while some of you have evidence of negativity in your life, you've kind of brought that on yourself. You've kind of thought those things into existence. You're surrounded by negative people, or you talk negative things about other people. So negativity just keeps coming back to you. Garbage in, garbage out. It's very simple. So that's why I say be careful of personalities in the flat earth. Everybody might have good information, good insight. We're all conduits. We all have antennas to reach up into the creative realm and pull down an idea. There's ideas always floating around all the time. It's just what you're aligned with at any particular moment. Lots of people get the same idea for lots of different ideas and products and inventions. They're just floating around. That's why they say there's nothing new under the sun. Ideas are there for the taking if you are in line with it. Now, 10 people might get the same idea for a widget, but only one person happens to be in line with the ability and the finances and the resources to take that widget to market. So the same goes with flat earth. A lot of people will get ideas. They'll start researching. They'll have conversations. They'll listen to other people. They'll start reading books maybe, Then they'll start to formulate their own opinions, and they'll have their own ideas. And their ideas are fine, but it's the personalities that you need to be careful of. You can take good information from other people and apply it to yourself. You don't have to follow that person. You don't have to follow a Tony Robbins or a Joel Osment, to pull their information of positivity, right? They're just people. I don't care who the president is. I don't care who the king and queen are. Those people are irrelevant. They're just people with interesting jobs. That's it. If once you realize that we are all people, we are all equal, we are all have the ability to create, then we're on a level playing field. Some people might opt to go into politics, or opt to go into show business, or opt to go into religion. That's just what interests them at the time. That's just interesting to them. It doesn't give them more power over you. It just puts them in a position to where they get to reach more people. They have a larger voice, a bigger audience. Maybe that appeals to their their ego, and that's fine. But don't give them voluntarily control. Don't parrot and repeat everything they say as if they're, Jesus reincarnate, because they're not. They're just people. All right, so let's get on to, I think I had maybe a video. Oh yeah, let's do some slides. Let's bring it back to NASA. All right, so common question you get asked all the time is, why would they lie? Well, that's a good question. All right, let's pull up some slides here. Speculation only leads to more lies and wastes time. We can speculate money, control, power, but in the end, we don't know for sure. We only feel that those are our motives. Now, it's really easy to get sucked into the conspiracy rabbit hole and say, oh, well, they just got $19 billion. Of course they would lie. Maybe. But there are some scientists in NASA that are earnestly doing a good job. They are doing things right? They don't necessarily know anything about what's going on at NASA, or that we didn't go to the moon, or that we don't have a space station. They're just people doing work there, you know. Take, for instance, water desalination. NASA's kind of at the forefront of desalinating water, their technologies that they've learned. A lot of things trickle down from the things they study, you know. So they do good. But to sit here and go, oh, well, they've got, you know, a $19 billion budget to defend. So they're also an arm of the government. And do you trust the government? You know, and 9 out of 10 people would say, yeah, I don't trust the government. So therefore, why would NASA be the only sound, sane arm of the government who doesn't lie? Why would they be the exception? Of course they lie. You know, and that's an easy, slippery slope to go down. You know, while that might be true, you can't prove it. You can't know it. Which brings me to my next point. What do you know for sure? Now, basically, what I feel is there is 3 levels of knowledge. There's primary knowledge, secondary knowledge, and tertiary knowledge. Primary knowledge is what you have personally witnessed, touched, or learned with your own senses. Primary knowledge is very important. It's what you know to be verifiable. It's what you know. You, only you. You touched the apple, pulled it from the tree, bit into it, tasted its juices. So if you were to describe that apple to somebody else, they only have secondary knowledge of the apple, of what it felt like in their hand, how it tasted, the crunch, the sound. That person doesn't have primary knowledge of the apple. They can only believe you on what you say. So secondary knowledge is what you hear, glean, and learn from a primary source. There's no physical connection with the source material. So you don't, you know, it's rare that a lot of us have secondary knowledge, because we either have primary knowledge or tertiary knowledge. We're rarely the intermediary. We're rarely the guy, the second guy. Tertiary knowledge. Tertiary knowledge is something that you've read in a book, heard on TV, saw it on the internet, or a friend. You're not personally verifiable with a secondary source. This is where we get most of our knowledge. It's kind of like the Catholic Church. It's like, oh, you can't talk to God. You have to talk to me, and we talk to God for you. So this is something that's very, very common for how we get our information. We get our information in a tertiary method. And my case in point about NASA, there's only 10 people who are alive that would be considered the last primary sources, who can say whether or not it's true or not. Remember, we can't verify it ourselves, but there's only 10 people who are alive today out of all the people in the world who have been far enough in space, who've walked on the moon, the Apollo missions, to see the Earth as a full circle globe. So their secondary sources are their flight directors, mission commanders, and flight controllers. When they came back down and got debriefed, those are the only people that heard from Buzz Aldrin, Jack Harrison, John Young, Michael Collins, etc. Those are the only people who have secondary knowledge of the people who supposedly saw the Earth as a circle. That's it. So the Knowledge Center, basically how we get our information from NASA, is basically from a public affairs officer, a PAO, and a mission operatives director manager, or an MOD. The PAO provides commentary and mission information to the media and public. That's where we get, oh, we went to the moon. Here's some pictures. It was a great time had by all. And then there's the people who disseminate that information amongst other departments and even brief the president. For instance, the public affairs officer wouldn't go to a presidential meeting, but the missions operator director would. And that's it. Those are basically the two people who allow us our tertiary information about what NASA says is true. Now, there's a hierarchy structure and there's a compartmentalization that goes on at NASA. There's literally binders of protocol that they have to follow. Everything down to how to tighten a nut, to how to wrap an electrical wire when you're making a splice. There's literally binders of protocol and rules that have to be applied very, very, very strictly. We've got these rules in place for, aeronautics and safety reasons, but they set the rules. They define the tone. They are the ones who craft the narrative, so to speak. So if you step outside of your binder, of your directorate, of your rules, or of your mandate, you'll get fired. Because for one, you didn't follow the rules. You put astronauts, you put airplanes, you put spacecraft, you put everything in danger for not following the rules. So when you get hired at NASA, they weed you out if you're a free thinker. They hire people who are good rule followers, who will do the job, who will go checklist, list. That's why when you hear when they're doing their mission control, everybody's sounding off. Go for flight, go for boosters, go for this, go for that. There's literally one person with one job whose job is he's got like 5 little things that he has to be in charge of, and that's the only thing he sees. He never even got to go into the room where they built the lunar module, right? And in fact, the people who built the lunar module farmed out some of that stuff to small little companies that just made one little thing. Oh, we need a company to manufacture airtight door frame seal. So they find a company that can handle that level of precision and handle that level of tolerance. And then they bid out the job, and then they weed out all the contractors who can't keep things secret or who can't, compartmentalize within themselves. So that narrows down the list of companies who can even do the job. Oftentimes it goes to large aerospace companies who already have R&D departments and skunkworks departments and have compartmentalization already pre-built in. Those are the people who get NASA contracts. So there's the layers of the hierarchy structure is so built in that the only people who know anything literally only has to be a handful of people. There really only has to be, I put on here, these 4 people. These 4 people have light bulbs. They're enlightened. That's it. Realistically, they can go to a board meeting with some high-level government officials. Not even the president has to be in that group. These people, let's say there's a group of 16 of them, and every person in that group is represented by all the other space agencies around the world. They all get their marching orders from somewhere, and they all sit together and have a secret agreement that this is what we agree on. Now go forth and spread your information. This is your directorate. So, and then that information passes to their administration. These people in the administration are the ones who literally write the binders of orders. So when there's a guy sitting there in the mission control room who has a headset and a screen, he's got his binder. He's got the information that he's only allowed to know, and that's it. And if there's anything above or below that, he has to pass that information on to somebody else whose job it is. So they take compartmentalization very seriously. And anybody who wants to be in, on board with this stuff, say like SpaceX, they also have a mission control. So they had to follow a very similar structure. To even get allowed to be on the playing field, they had to abide by the same rules, the same regulations, apply for the same permits, and be vetted. They just weren't going to let any billionaire with a whole bunch of money just join the space program unless they're vetted. And again, even Elon Musk might not even be in one of the enlightened groups. He might be allowed to be an administrator, and that's it. He doesn't have to know. He just thinks that, hey, we're machining these things out of 3D metal sintering so we can make rocket boosters much easier and cheaper, which is true. You can. Hello? 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 All right. Let's see, what else do we got here? Okay, I think it's about time to see if we can get our guest caller on. All right, hang on with me just a moment while we can try to connect. Okay, we seem to have some technical difficulties with the call. He called, I hung up on him, I tried calling him. We'll see if we can get him back on the air here. And then I will, in the meantime, let's see. Hello everybody in the chat. Hello, Katie. Let's see, how many people do we have in the room right now? Only 6 people. Man, I've been talking for an hour and a half and only 6 people are here? This sucks. 7? That's okay. This video will get uploaded to the channel and be seen by more people, and then hopefully people will have time to listen to this and jump in on the next live stream. In the meantime, let's see if we can get a hold of our guest caller one more time. Exactly, that's what counts. Panic Williams is in the house, everybody. For those of you who don't know, he practically broke his leg slipping on watermelon. Oh, right. It's a secret.
Hi, this is Michael.
Oh, my God. Open. I'm going to send him a message. Say, hey, open your Google Hangouts page. And call me when you do. There. Sometimes these technical issues happen when you have scheduled callers. Of course, it would have been awesome to rehearse this, but that's okay. So, let's talk about something I have planned in the works here. What's the day of the solar eclipse? Is that August 21st? That's it. I think so. So August 21st, sometime in the morning, I would really like to send up the balloon launch. What I've got planned is I'm going to set up a Fuji XT2 camera. It's got probably one of the best, highest rate of sensors at this point on the market. So it's almost a full frame DSLR, but I think we're going to send it up with the equivalent of a 24 millimeter lens, so there'll be no lens distortion at all. And the whole idea being here is that we're sending up a sensor that can maybe capture the eclipse while it's happening from a different vantage point, say just outside the swaths of full darkness, and we'll take a travel up to the desert, north Nevada near Idaho border. So we're not directly underneath the light, but at a vantage point to where we can see it happen. So I'm going to use a balloon rig that'll hold 4 giant helium weather balloons. So it'll get up to the atmosphere much faster and will least likely pop once it gets to a certain altitude. So hopefully it'll stay up a little longer. I don't know that you can go any higher because helium can only go so high. So, and those balloons get really, really, really large in the less pressure there is up in the upper atmosphere. So, yeah, that's kind of been my plan for a couple of years now, is to send up a really nice camera, no GoPro lens. We're talking a very expensive camera at the risk of losing and or breaking it. Of course, we'll have all the little GPS little trackers, near Arduino trackers and things like that, altimeters and stuff, so we can get good info from where it is, and we'll have to go chase it down. Hopefully it won't drift into an Air Force base, which is why I want to go to the little furthest edges of Nevada towards the north there near Idaho. So there's just more open desert, and we can recover the payload better. So that's what I've got planned for whatever you call it, August 21st. Part of the reason why I wanted to start doing these live stream chats and getting super chat enabled was to fund this little operation. We're gonna it's not terribly expensive to do. I can get giant bottle of helium at the welder place, and we can drive up there and fill up 4 balloons and get it to launch pretty easily. we can make the whole rig all in the shop here. So I've got pretty much all the capabilities to work with aluminum, carbon fiber, whatever it takes to make the camera, a balanced camera rig to hold a real camera. You know, the recording time is probably going to be an issue with battery limitation and card space. So I don't think I'll film it in 4K. I'll probably just film it in HD, just because I want to be sure we get high enough, quick enough to at least get good footage. So yeah, that's what we got planned. Can you only donate to Super Chat from desktop version of YouTube? You know what? That I don't know. But my Super Chat will probably not be enabled and probably until at least the second chat. Because you need apparently 1,000 subscribers. So everybody here, it's in the chat room, go ahead and click the little subscribe button over there. That'll help. But in the meantime, I went ahead and put my PayPal email address on there. You can use just a tip as a tip jar. Super Chat takes 30%, so if you donated $1, I'd get 70 cents. So we'll bear that in mind in the future. Yeah, Felix Baumgartner's jump 128,000 feet. Yeah, if we can get anywhere near that. Actually, you know what? It would be great to get to that height exactly, or even higher, because if you're going up that high with a real lens that doesn't have any curvature built in, no barrel distortion, no pin cushion, no fisheye, then at the very least you can expose the fact that this was those images from his jump were purposely distorted. You know, yeah, you can take the angle of, well, it was just try to show you more action, more of the scene, and I get that. You know, I don't think the GoPro company is necessarily out there to try to rig the way we view our universe, and in fact, it's just the opposite. They want to show more of our world, get more scope in the frame, and you know, everybody's TV screens are now at this 16:9 ratio, so it only makes sense to have resolutions that capture that, you know, in a wide swath of viewing angle. And if you've ever looked at an action cam that has the ability to go narrower, it just kind of looks weird and feels weird. You know, somebody going down on a mountain bike trail where you just see a very narrow field of view, it feels unnatural. So the only way that you can combat that is to make up a little rig on your helmet that holds 4 cameras right in a line with each other, and they're just like a half a degree tilted off, and then you combine all that image in post-production, and that would replicate your natural field of view, like what you would see with your 2 eyes. So GoPro's not the enemy, but if you're trying to show something very specific, like a flat horizon, you know, or very far away, you need to use real optics. All right. So at least we're not talking to an empty crowd here, huh? Let's try and call. Our guest caller one more time, see if he's awake. Maybe he fell asleep. like trying to call somebody who won $1 million and they don't pick up, and you're like, we'll go on to the next caller.
Hi, this is Michael.
And guess that's not going to happen. Maybe for the next chat. We shall see. In the meantime, in between time, let's see if there's any questions in this chat room. I got deleted from NASA Live for talking about how my dash cam has the same wide angle lens as they use. Yeah, well, you can't go on their front porch and talk shit to them. I mean, come on. What'd you expect? They'd be like, oh, yeah, welcome, stranger. Thanks for talking shit to us. Did I get a thumbs down? Oh, man. Maybe they don't like my voice. Or maybe it's a JTRIG. Maybe it's somebody who's paid to come and talk shit. And they're just keyboard warring. I can just see them just angrily banging on their keyboard right now. Just like, oh, you bad person, how dare you expose our inner workings. All right, so there's enough dead space here. Let's go on to the next topic I want to talk about, which is the future of flat Earth economy and why it's important that you vote with your wallets early and often. So what we are witnessing here is we're on the cusp of something that's it's a burgeoning enterprise. And those of you who recognize that, whether or not you believe the Earth is round or flat, will greatly benefit financially from a new shift in paradigm, a new age, a new group of people that just popped on the scene that have jobs and have money to spend. So what we've got coming on right now is a whole bunch of people who can create merchandise that says the Earth is flat, research it. Or here's a flat Earth t-shirt, here's a flat Earth Frisbee, here's some posters, here's, there's just a whole myriad of things that you could possibly link flat Earth with that move economies. And eventually how flat Earth becomes mainstream is through financial sector. If there's enough people spending money and supporting each other and creating our own little mini micro economy, bigger corporations will take notice. Then the word starts to spread. Eventually you'll see a flat Earth shirt at Walmart, believe it or not. So it's very important that if now, of course, full disclosure, I of course am going to capitalize on the flat Earth movement as well. I am, for those of you who don't know, in the print and design industry, and so yeah, I can print and make up anything, and I can do so without a bias, or without scoffing at your idea. There are some places that just won't touch your propaganda. They just won't look at, they don't want to print your stuff. It's like you're going to run into it. You're going to, at some point, you're out there saying, hey, I've got this idea for a flat Earth bumper sticker, and you're going to run into a business who prints bumper stickers, and they'll be like, yeah, we're not going to take your money. So that is a very real possibility, and that does happen. So that's why it's important in the early hours of the flat Earth movement that you support other people who are in the flat Earth arena, who are at least agnostic or amiable to the cause and will take your money and provide you a service that you're asking for. So, if somebody has a Teespring account and they've got t-shirts up for sale, go ahead and buy their t-shirt, spread the link, share whatever it is you can, to other people, because we create a large enough groundswell monetarily, we will get noticed. And there's going to be opportunists who are outsiders who don't believe in the flat earth model, but who will be on board with also selling your merchandise or selling their own merchandise to us. We are a captive audience. It's no different than all the people who meet in Roswell to sell alien merchandise and books and healing crystals and all that stuff. They're a closed microcosm, but there are people who also recognize how much money there is in aliens. It's evident by how many alien movies there have been, alien merchandise, alien toys, posters, you name it. So if you don't see that right now, if you don't recognize that you're at the cusp of financial independence, then I don't know what to tell you. There's right now, as I speak, there's literally going to be people, we'll just say 5 years from now, who are now who will be millionaires 5 years from now because of the flat earth movement today, because of stuff they're selling or stuff they're peddling or seminars they're hosting or scientific experiments and grants they're getting. There will be people that have made money that are probably broke as shit today that are going to be millionaires because they capitalized. They saw the momentum. They saw what this is for what it is. It's a captive audience with wallets. So at the very least, if anything you got out of this, you're helping spread the narrative through your wallets, through the small community of like-minded people. So I encourage, everybody to, give when you can and give your time when you can, give what you can, when you can, don't go into debt. Don't put things on credit cards, just to support flat earth movement. That's silly. You're just further enslaving yourself to the powers that be. They'll just stay in power longer the more debt you hold. You guys understand that, that debt is the new slavery. Panic says, I want to put the UN flat earth map in the rear window of my car. Can you make that? Well, I actually designed the flag. So I have the FE flag will be in my store, and Math Powerland will be selling the UN flag in his. Thanks for the link in the IPS live chat. I doubt anybody's going to come over from there. They're angry militant group of activists. No, I'm just kidding. They're doing good stuff over there. They're promoting activism. They're moving forward with ideas and projects, and they're putting their money where their mouth is, and that's good. And that's exactly what I'm saying, is you need to further the narrative with your wallet. Shouting on the street corner the earth is flat doesn't really do anything. Wearing a flat earth t-shirt has a lot more subtle message. Yeah, I can do a perforated window decal for your car. At some point, maybe I'll put up in the store, I'll make models of people's cars and windows, and I'll just print them and cut them to size and ship them to you so you can install them yourselves if you want a perforated back window thing, or just a small sticker in the corner. It just says FE. We'll do those as well. All right, so let's go back to let me contact our mystery caller here. It says he was locked out of his house. I think that's what it said. So I'm calling him, and he's like, I can't get to my phone. All right. Hey, how about some of this real fake stuff, huh? Again, made in a computer program. Where is my store? Nicholas asks. Well, I just bought flatearthfacts.info last night, so I haven't had the time to build the site yet. But that is where I'll put some stuff. So go ahead and bookmark that, and eventually, when the site is live, it'll show up in the descriptions of these videos from here on out, and there'll be things available to purchase there. I'll probably work on that this weekend, so get something up pretty quickly there. How many people do we have in the chat? Oh, 7 people watching. Wow. Pulling down the numbers. Let's see. Here's a flat earth billboard I came up with. I have access to digital billboards here in Las Vegas. I might put that up. What do you guys think of that? Yes, but you're the loyal 7. You know, what's funny, maybe we'll just have a club. It's everybody that has a wrench now is the OG members. In fact, that actually might make a pretty good bumper sticker or a poster. Oh, any of you that happen to have channels and you need flat earth memes, since everybody steals my work anyway, go ahead, and my email's in the info box, in the description box. Go ahead and email me something you might want. If you want to use it for your channel, for your memes, or whatever it is that you do. I'm the meme generator. It's just I'm not known as the meme generator. I just make them for other people, and they use them. Alright, something I want to play here, since we're just shooting the shit at this point, is... Here we go. It's a video right here. This is Challenger STS-8.
There's a vehicle on the pad the night of the launch. Unfortunately, you can't see the lightning and the rain as we depart our quarters heading out to the pad. Once again, it doesn't show, but it was raining cats and dogs. And I think each of us in the crew were not real confident that we were going to get off. Here's a picture in the cockpit before liftoff. That's looking over Richard's shoulder. And we got off a little bit late, but we did get to go. And the three main engines started just fine, and we're running very smoothly.
These were compilation videos post-mission. They were basically put together and shown to the press of, the highlight reel of
it was just like day in the cockpit. And all during first stage, we didn't need lights in the cockpit.
Really kind of comical, actually.
Plenty bright. The vibration was pretty much like other crews have
Got
explained
his
in the
sleeves
cockpit.
rolled up,
When
put
they
a helmet
first
on.
stage, we
It's
were
like,
shaking
is he
around
in
a little bit,
little
but nothing you couldn't
simulator there, just not
handle.
taking this very seriously? We're
From
sitting on top
reports
of
that
a
people on the
rocket.
ground, they got a
Shake
pretty
around a little bit.
spectacular show. From inside
But,
the cockpit looking out, it looked like you kind of
STS-8
expect it to look like
is
at
the one
top
where
of
you
this.
see the guy's head that looks like it's behind the model of the space shuttle. It's more than likely a reflection off the TV monitor when they filmed this in the press room. I'll give them that. But you got to admit, the model looks retardedly fake. But keep in watch, right shortly after the model incident where they pulled a little satellite out with a string, and I think you can see the string on this. Watch how they turn the Earth on. That's my absolute favorite fuck-up fakery ever.
Being sure everything is running properly. The next scene you'll see from the cockpit is when the solid rocket boosters departed, and that was really a bright flash. And after that, there wasn't as much flashing or brightness in the cockpit until the external tank. There's a SEP with the SRBs. That's when those rockets push it away and it really gets bright.
Okay, once we got on orbit, the view from space was just spectacular, and this is just an indication of that just from the cockpit.
Here's the infamous scene here.
One of the objectives of our mission was to deploy the INSAT satellite, and this is the cockpit arrangement associated with deploying the satellite. In this particular view, Dan is actually operating the 16-millimeter camera, panning the cockpit. You can see Dick over there on the left. He's sort of supervising the operation. There's Dale. He's going to be handling the cameras and the switches. And I'm working from the commander's seat up front, sending out commands through keyboard and talking to the PAM and a satellite through CRT display. You can see, as I said, that was basically our arrangement. Dan sat in the pilot seat during this operation, sort of monitoring the motion of the vehicle, making sure that it was steady and that there were very few vibrations of any sort. Here's a picture of the INSAT actually being deployed from the spacecraft. You can see that the deploy went very smoothly. At the moment of deploy, there was a large thump, and as I said, the spacecraft was deployed very smoothly, and there were no vibrations or no precession of the satellite as it left the payload bay. Matter of fact, Dale pointed out that about a minute, 20 seconds after deployment, you could see some of the jets on the spacecraft actually firing as part of the nutation control associated out the TDRS network. And so the shuttle flew various different attitudes during the mission, checking out the KU band, and this is the picture of the KU band antenna that was used to check out the TDRS satellite. We found that the communications were excellent both up and down, and that's going to be a real advantage for us on future missions.
Another task, of course, was the work with the RMS and the PFTA, the Payload Flight Test Article. In this view, I had the 16mm camera and tried to give you a look at what the RMS, the arm, looks like in its normal berth position. Here it is stowed as it is for launch and entry, and those times on orbit when it's not actually being used, it actually rolls in on those pylons, those mounts that you can see on the bottom. This is a view in the aft flight deck. I'm over at the arm station, and Richard's to the left to fly the vehicle. Here you can see the arm going in towards grapple fixture number 5. Remember, that's the one on the front of the PFTA. You can see here it looks like we're losing the view of the arm as it goes behind the DFI pallet in the front. However, from the cockpit, that was a very comfortable thing to do, and it never appeared to us that we were getting close to contact. This is lifting the PFTA out in direct mode, where I'm moving one joint at a time, again on grapple fixture 5. And here's a shot with grapple fixture 2. A lot of the tests were putting the arm and the PFTA up in various configurations and then putting pulses into the orbiter or into the arm and seeing what the relative motions were between the two. So while we were doing that, of course, we got some fantastic views of the Earth down below, and had the cameras always at the ready to get good pictures. Arm operations were extremely smooth. Richard and I had no problems operating it from the aft flight deck. You can see that we didn't bother to restrain ourselves in any way when we didn't want to, and the whole task was very easy. We did on flight day 5 something that surprised us all as far as the views go, and that is a look at the underside of the vehicle. This task has always been in our repertoire. It's been in the checklist, but we've never had to use it. Dick worked on it some in STS-2 in anticipation of being able to look at tile. Here you can see the view of the underside is extremely clear. And again, these are 16mm movies made off the TV film, so the TV is really much better than this. Here we zoom in, I think, on one of the elevons. This is the port elevon, which is down a little bit, and you can see that with the real VTR film, you're almost able to make out numbers on individual tiles. We're really surprised at the great view that we got with this technique. The arm, of course, was hidden from us. It was down around the bottom of the vehicle, so we really couldn't see it. This series, you can see some vernier jets firing in the back of the vehicle, and after the next one, watch how the vernier jet firings excite the glow around the ohm spot. You can see it there. It gets very bright for a few seconds and then slowly fades away. But even at its dimmest, you can see that you can still see the glow, and it was even more apparent to us with our eyeballs. Here we're setting up for an on-orbit.
Okay, here's where they fire retro rockets, which is hilarious. In a zero atmosphere, what do rockets push against? And more importantly, what keeps them from over-rotating and just spinning forever and ever and ever and ever and ever?
This is the final work on one of the Cephas samples. The sample has already been separated. The cells are in individual partitions in that tray. You saw me there shaking the tray to make sure the cells mixed with the nutrient materials that had been previously placed in those cells. I'm now putting the whole collector tray back into a cooler where it remained for the rest of the flight. Bill?
Yes, this is an old man in space taking a walk on his walker. And here we have some of the long-suffering crewmen being subjected to a variety of studies looking at various aspects of the vestibular control system. The electronics there work very well in that mode. It's rather simple, but I would compare the quality of the records and such that we obtained to those of...
Also note, none of these clips in zero gravity last more than 15-20 seconds at a time, 60 seconds at most, but these are all just clips, highlight clips.
While you track both the head and eye motion, which again allows one to see how well the eyes are capable of tracking and how they're affected.
These next few scenes just show some other activity. You'll notice how clean the middeck is. That we kept it this way the entire flight. Now, actually, I'm going down there to change the cabin temp controller, which is underneath the middeck floor, and you can see just by floating and an occasional toe leaning up on something that you can do your work, and it's one of the reasons in zero gravity and on orbit that people can work such long hours and not get tired. It's just a delight to work in that environment. This is a little scene on preparing a meal. Each of these each is an individual food tray. And we've had, you'll see here in a moment, we've had several calls for guys, for Major League Scouts looking for infielders. But generally, after a couple of days on orbit, we found that one or two of the guys could set up a meal for all of the crew in just 8 or 10 minutes.
Did they just make a black joke?
And provided a really nice way to stop work for a little while and have a hot meal. It was a lot of fun. This is, as a task, about twice a day we had to change the lithium hydroxide canisters also underneath the middeck floor. We had a shopping list of just engineering duties that we had to perform that we've on each of the flights we're trying to record, just so that training for future crews can go well. And this is an example of one of them. These canisters are used to scrub the air so that it'll be clean and easy to use. You notice this is that the seats, except for the commander's and the pilot's seat up on the flight deck, the mission specialist seats for ascent and entry are dismantled after you get on orbit, and they're very difficult in 1G and very heavy to manhandle to install. So this is real time. We set up a camera, or at least Dale and Bill and Guy did, and in about 2 minutes from the time they untaped the chair until Dale had strapped into it and was sitting there was just a couple of minutes, and it's just a good example of how easy it is to work in zero gravity. That kind of ends up our own orbit part of the film. Now we're going to talk briefly about the entry and landing. This is 16mm photography taken by Dale of the front windows. Again, you can see the glow, which now is orange in color. And as we described before, these are the pulses taken by Dale by holding a camera and looking aft and above his head, above the tail. We have, and this is real time, incidentally. This pulsing is happening at the frequency that you're seeing it. It is not understood at the moment. We've shown it to the thermal folks, and it's going to take a little thinking to describe what it is that we're seeing. This is probably a little long for the press conference. We left this entire sequence in so that our engineering friends could take a look at it. One last shot panning of the cockpit with the glow. As it started out changing colors. Up high it was sort of a salmon color and finally got white hot. This is the landing as seen through an infrared camera that was out at Edwards, transported down there from the Navy Weapons Center at China Lake. You'll notice it's infrared, so actually the vehicle was not visible to anybody that was there at this point. The brighter areas are the hottest, and so you can see the red hot or white hot nose cone there. And if you look carefully, you can see that the window areas are also hotter. It's so good that you see the gear deployment, and you can see that black area are actually the cold rubber main tires. And we defy Hollywood to match this sequence. This is the Challenger coming in for landing on runway 22 at Edwards. You'll see us kicking up a little bit of dust off the runway surface. There's the touchdown, which was fairly smooth, and all I can say for the landing is my hat is off to the people that helped us develop the heads-up display and the night lighting system, and to the great work that was in support for the last year, generally in the middle of the night, to the folks out in our shuttle training aircraft that provided Dan and me with the training that it took to accomplish this first night landing. Finally, at the end, here's the crew holding on for dear life to the rails to make sure they don't embarrass themselves walking down these steps, but actually by now, everybody was readapting quickly to 1G, and I hope
nice
this movie
portrays
to you the fact that we had a lot of fun on the flight, because if it does, it was certainly accurate.
Well, there's a whole bunch of videos like that. And those are all sanctioned videos by some third-party Space Smithsonian Institute or something like that. So they just keep perfecting their little techniques over and over and over again. Which brings me back to a point I made earlier, is space kept getting better looking the more technologically advanced we got. All right, let's see. Anybody in here want to ask some questions? Yeah, they're nowhere near as embarrassed as they should be, because they were up there just doing parabolic rides. They were just they were just having fun, to be quite honest. You know, they thought they were doing good stuff. They thought they were doing what they're supposed to be doing. How it's spun to the public isn't really of any of their concern. They're not only bound by confidentiality agreements, but, you know, they're all ex-military, and they all basically can't say anything without being held against, you know, or treason against them. So, yeah, they're going to play along. They'll get a nice pension. Do I believe the Earth is stationary? Certainly feels like it. All the evidence points to that it's not moving. Doesn't really require any belief system. I don't have to believe in a scientific theory or a mathematical model. You know, if you said the Earth isn't moving, I'd be like, okay, I agree. Or if you said the Earth is moving, I'd be like, doesn't feel like it. Do you have any proof? And then when they start going into these really weird models that require your suspension of belief in your senses, then, you know, Occam's razor kind of applies. It's not the simplest, easiest answer. I hope that answers your question. What else you guys got? guess I touched on this a little bit earlier, but I'll reiterate it again. Point number 6 is the Earth is flat. Now what? Well, now what is our time to wake up and shake off dirty old rags. You know, wash ourselves of the old world paradigm and create the world we want for ourselves. And fortunately, unfortunately, it's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult, and it's going to require a lot more empathy, and it's going to require a lot more caring. It's going to require people opening their doors to their neighbors and talking with people and being friendly instead of cloistering themselves in their little tiny McMansion houses and their little apartments. And, you know, how many people actually know their neighbors and their neighbors' names and their kids and what they do? You know, you can make an impact in your immediate surrounding by developing communities within communities. And I think that's something that we need to work on the most, is interpersonal relationships. Those are things that we have to do to move forward as a society. Whether or not you're able to bring people in the fold and convince them the Earth is flat is kind of irrelevant. You have the knowledge that the Earth is flat, so therefore you are enlightened. You have knowledge, and you can use that for good. You can build communities and build people up and help people, you know. You don't have to convince anybody. This isn't a religion. You don't have to proselytize. You just have to be cognizant that you were woken up to a greater knowledge that other people don't know. And that's what's important, is realizing our humanity is at stake. The more and more they keep us penned up in a box, and the more and more they keep us individualized and fighting each other through ideological means, whether it's race or religion or politics, that's their game. This is the new paradigm. This is our game. We are the enlightened ones. We are the revolutionaries. We are the pioneers. We are the ones with new ideas. We are the ones that are giving the middle finger to the establishment and saying, no, I reject your authority. I claim my own authority. Nobody rules me except me. That's what the flat earth represents. And they're going to try really, really hard to make you feel like an idiot, to make you feel stupid, to make you feel dumb. They're going to browbeat you. They're going to use appeal to authority. You know, oh, well, this guy, and we're scientists. We're smarter than you. We wear white lab coats. So they're just going to keep bringing up these logical fallacies over and over and over again. And it works for the most part for the last 500 years, you know, or however many years. And it's time to reclaim our sovereignty. It doesn't make a bit of difference who they are or what they have to say about you. If you found the flat earth to be a personal truth, then that's all that matters. It's your truth and yours alone. You run with it. If it helps you become a better person, become a better human being, then it's a good thing. If you just want to take the stance to not be engaged in arguments all the time by saying, hey, it's just science fiction. It's just like aliens. I'm just kooky. Just let me think my thing. But secretly you're using that to bridge gaps and build communities and help people, then take that route. You know, but be very wary of anybody who causes derision and strife and name calls and says people are shills and says people are government agents and says people, and because let's be real, there are people that are going to try to divide you. There are people that are actively engaged to stop this information, the spread of information, because they know the spread of information also leads to your mental independence. It's breaking the chains. And that's where we need to be moving this forward, you know, is avoid the cult of personalities. You know, they're just people with ideas, just like me. I'm just a guy. who has thoughts, and that's it. But you cannot forget that we're humans. We're all humans. We're all here for a purpose. You might have differing opinions on what that purpose is, but I think the purpose is personal. Your purpose may be, hey, I feel like I need to help people through health and medicine. I want to become a doctor. Or, hey, I've got this really great creative abilities I want to build and help people make things. I want to build homes for people, or I want to build things and items and stuff that's useful. Or I've got this connection with earth and soil. I want to grow plants and feed people. So everybody has their own individual voice, their own individual guide of what they feel is important to them. That's why school's not for everybody. And, everybody needs just to find what interests them. And if you're lucky enough to make a living along the way doing what interests you, consider yourself lucky. Consider yourself smart. Consider yourself awake. Consider yourself part of the blessed, whatever it is, but recognize that you've been given talents and you've been given ideas. What you do with them is up to you. That's the whole point of free will. And that's why we need to take our lives back. We need to take our free will back. You have to turn your TV off. It's literally an indoctrination machine. If turning your TV off for 4 hours a day means you spent 4 hours outside with your friends and family, walking the dogs, meeting people, playing with your kids, just doing something active, then you automatically become a better person. You have unplugged from the matrix. This is your red pill. Whether or not the earth is physically flat or not, or the orbs of our eye sockets just convolute our vision. Maybe the earth is wrapped up in a really weird thing, and if we could pull off our physical eyes and see the reality of it, it would just freak us out. Maybe that's what it is. But the point is that there's a new paradigm shift. There's a new harbor, a new safe place for people to go that want to be different, that want to say no to the existing power structure, and they want to say no to the struggle and the strife and the pain and the suffering, because it's not necessary. We don't need it. It's not part of who we are, why we're here, and where we're going. So I guess that is where we will wrap this stream up today, unless anybody's got any questions. And then let me know if you guys like this kind of chat thing here, and I will maybe do this a weekly, a monthly, daily, every few days or whatever. Yeah, and maybe next time we can get the other half of the Dangerous Minds group on the Google Hangout, and see where that goes, see what kind of topics we can cover there. Because realistically, I think the interpersonal journey is far more important than the physical journey. You don't need to cross the ice to prove anything. Because how long do any of us live? 80 years, 90 if we're lucky, sometimes 70, maybe 60. We don't have a lot of time on this planet. It's what we do with that time is important. The one concept that I like to think about a lot is the abstractness of your birth date and your death date. Those are two dates you don't have any control over. You didn't choose when you came. Maybe you did, but you didn't choose your birth date, and you certainly don't choose your death date. Even if you commit suicide, pretty sure it was predetermined. So, but we do have control of all the time in between. Every minute of every day, we can make decisions. We can alter our realities. And sometimes when we alter our realities, we alter other people's realities. Sometimes for the good, sometimes for the bad. And those are choices we have to live with. So always be very mindful of the words you choose to use. Always be mindful of the fact that what you say might affect somebody down the line or even immediately. So be guardians of your words, because they have power, they have meaning. So with that, good night, everybody, and I will let everyone know when we have a new live stream coming up in probably a couple days. Have a good evening, folks. Good night.